Out front tonight, chaos, the impeachment investigation descending into a circus after roughly 24 of Trump's closest allies forced their way into the secure hearing room where Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary Laura Cooper was about to testify in the Ukraine impeachment hearings. This is video as the Republican stunt was about to take place. Sources telling CNN that President Trump knew about this, knew that it was going to go down, and the lawmakers walked in there, and we understand it was, well, sources tell us they were screaming in each other's faces, adding, quote, "It was the closest I've seen around here to mass civil unrest as a member of Congress." Well, this type of behavior is not something we see in the United States. No, it is what sometimes we see in other countries that don't have the strong institutions that we have here, countries like Ukraine, which is at the center of the impeachment investigation, yelling, fingers in people's faces, stuff we, like to scoff at or laugh at. Well, that seems to be what this impeachment investigation is coming down to now that the president's own top diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, detailed a quid pro quo, telling lawmakers he was told Trump would withhold crucial military aid to Ukraine until the country announced an investigation into Biden and the 2016 election. Testimony so damaging that Trump is resorting to smears, tweeting, "Never Trumper Republican John Bellinger represents never Trumper diplomat Bill Taylor, who I don't know," in testimony before Congress. Now, one thing to say loud and clear on the back of that tweet is that whatever Taylor's politics may or may not be, he was handpicked for his job by Trump's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He has served in government for 30 years under all presidents, beginning with Ronald Reagan. He first was appointed ambassador by George W. Bush. So to slam him as a partisan liar because he speaks the truth as he knows it is just wrong. And another thing, Trump is now slamming the investigation as unfair. Here's that part. Do nothing Democrats allow Republicans zero representation, zero due process, and zero transparency. Does anybody think this is fair? Well, if he's going to put that out to his tens of millions of followers, it's also important to say loudly and clearly that that is exactly how the impeachment process works. It is not a court of law. And by the way, there is Republican representation in those hearings. Every Republican on the committee can be there and ask questions. Same with the Democrats. They have equal time to question witnesses. So if that is unfair, okay, well, it was certainly quite fair when Republicans were in charge. Flashback to 2015, Trey Gowdy. Remember him, former chairman who was investigating Benghazi? Well, he said, quote, "Non-committee members are not allowed in the room during the deposition. Those are the rules, and we have to follow them. No exceptions made." He was right then. They are right now. No exceptions. And tonight, as the future of Trump's presidency is at stake, Trump is now slamming Republicans, hitting them really hard because he thinks they are not protecting him.
They don't have a Mitt Romney in their midst. They don't have the Mitt Romneys of the world. They stick together better than the Republicans. We got to stick together. We got to stick together.
Manu Raju is out front live on Capitol Hill. Manu, what are you learning about what Cooper said when that deposition actually got started many hours later due to the fracas? What did she say?
Yeah, after 5 hours delay, she ultimately did testify behind closed doors for about 3.5 hours, which is much shorter than other witnesses. But what we have learned from people who attended this deposition, that she gave a very detailed and technical readout about how foreign aid has been dispersed, how it typically happens. And lawmakers came away with the impression that how the Ukraine aid was dealt with and how it was stalled deviated from that normal process. Now, this, of course, comes in the aftermath of that riveting testimony from yesterday, in which the top diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, raised serious concerns that the Ukraine aid had been stalled. And he said he later learned that the president had instructed the aid to be stalled until the Ukrainians announced those investigations into the Bidens in the 2016 campaign. So today, when Republicans came and stormed the committee proceedings, Democrats contended this was an effort to distract away from that headline that was generated throughout the day in that closed-door deposition that was about to take place in the morning. I'm told that a Republican Congressman, Bradley Byrne, got in the face of Adam Schiff, yelled at him, as did Louis Gohmert, another Republican, screaming about the process. There was some Democratic pushback, one from Val Demings of Florida, who attacked Republicans, saying that they want to serve as this kind of role model for their children. And on it went for some time as Republicans refused to leave the room. Ultimately, after 5 hours, they did. And even so, some Republicans brought their electronics into the secure area, which is not allowed. Some Republicans said they didn't know the procedures. But nevertheless, Adam Schiff came out afterwards, and he was asked if he was concerned if the facility of the secure facility had been compromised in any way. And he said, yes, he is concerned. He did not elaborate in any way, but he contended this is all an effort to scare other witnesses, intimidate other witnesses to not come forward in this impeachment probe, something the Republicans deny. Aaron.
All right, Manu, thank you very much. I want to go now to someone who was inside that room today when Republicans stormed in and was also there when the Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary Laura Cooper was actually able to give her deposition. Finally, after 5 hours, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell joins me now, sits on the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees. I appreciate your time. Okay, so I want to start first with the news here in the actual investigation after the 5 hours. You finally did get to hear from Laura Cooper. She stayed. She gave her testimony. You were able to depose her. Did you learn anything new, Congressman?
Good evening, Aaron. Yes, we did. And I can characterize it this way. All of the arrows continue to point in one direction, which is that this shakedown scheme from the very top, ordered by the president, was well underway this summer. We have not seen a arrow pointing in any other direction, but I do want to thank Ms. Cooper, and I know my colleagues do as well, for enduring this chaotic scene today and still sticking around. You know, she had a lawyer that, was paid out of her pocket, who she probably didn't expect to have to be there for 5 extra hours, but she is a good public, nonpartisan civil servant who courageously waited around and provided truthful testimony.
All right. So, you heard Manu talking about how she explained how the technical process of how military aid would be dispersed and was able to lay out how, in this case, it deviated from the norm. How important was her testimony to your case for impeachment, her testimony specifically?
Yeah, what I can say, Aaron, is that we know that the president wanted from the Ukrainians 2 things: for them to investigate the 2016 election and essentially exonerate Russia, and to investigate his upcoming 2020 opponent and Vice President Biden. And if they did that, they'd get a White House meeting and they would get the security assistance that they desperately needed. Ms. Cooper was a part of the decision-making process and was a witness to what others were doing around the security assistance. I will just say this. We have plenty of evidence, and you saw in the statement that was put in the Washington Post yesterday from Ambassador Taylor, that the assistance was tied to the president's demands for investigations, and Ms. Cooper was a relevant witness today in that regard.
All right, obviously, which could be significant. Now I want to get to the 5 hours of time that was wasted today. You were inside that secure room when Republicans stormed in and held the deposition up for hours. How would you describe it? We understand there was, the reporting is that there was people yelling in faces, there was screaming. Is that accurate?
I saw, in these desperate times for the president and his defenders in Congress, they took desperate distractionary measures, but it didn't work. We heard from the witness. I think it was unfortunate that, I had just sat down. The witness was sitting across from me at the table. You had about 50 members of Congress already in the room ready for this hearing. And then I saw the witness abruptly get up and leave, and then in comes all these members who are not on the committee. They've got their electronics out. They're shouting. They're screaming. And this woman, she works for the federal government, just keeps her head down, wants to do her job, is defying orders from the White House to not participate. And this is what she's subjected to. But we're not going to let it deter us. We move forward. The chairman is determined to get this done fairly, but also swiftly. And they can continue the hijinks, but they're just delaying the inevitable, which is this president is going to be held accountable.
So did they do anything illegal? Is there going to be any disciplinary action? I mean, they violated a classified setting. They violated the rules. Is there any repercussion for that?
Aaron, I'll leave it to the Speaker and the Chairman to decide that. But if their goal today was to obstruct and delay the proceedings, it didn't work. Clearly, this was sanctioned by the President, who met with many of them yesterday and told them to go and fight harder. But I also look at this, Aaron, as this is just an overall consciousness of guilt. This is what guilty people do. The president tells them to fight harder because he has a guilty conscience. He's confessed. Mick Mulvaney has co-signed that confession. They don't want to be a part of the process. And what was interesting today, I'll just say this. Yeah. The people who stuck around for hours in that room and held that room They were in that room longer than the overwhelming majority of members on the Republican side who are supposed to be in that room during these hearings, because they show up, they complain about the process, and then they bounce. They don't want to hear
They don't stay in
this
there and
overwhelming
listen?
evidence.
Are there any
No,
Republicans that stay in and listen for all of this?
Yes, there are, and I want to be fair to those, but the overwhelming majority of those who come in leave.
All right. And just one other question. The ones who stay, are they asking questions, putting in the time and the thought and the effort? Are you getting that feeling from your Republican colleagues on the committee who are allowed to be in there and who do get the same time you get to ask questions?
I'm seeing these cockamamie conspiratorial questions that believe that Ukraine was involved in the 2016 election interference rather than Russia. I would like to see more people, and I really credit Francis Rooney, a Republican, who is asking the right questions publicly on television about, what he's seen. I'd like to see people like him who are visibly concerned by what's going on. I'd like to see them have an opportunity to ask fair questions of these